Commander Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of Terra's Defiance and watched the biggest ship he had ever seen appear in space above Earth. The alien vessel was so large that it blocked out the stars behind it. His hands shook as he gripped the metal rail in front of him. "Sir, that thing is 50 times bigger than our entire fleet," said Lieutenant Woo Jin from his station. His voice was quiet and scared. Hyunwoo nodded. He had been in space for 20 years, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The ship was black and covered in strange lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. It looked like a mountain floating in space. "Get me Admiral Bo-Ra," Hyunwoo said into his communicator. Admiral Bo-Ra's voice came through the speakers a moment later. She was on the command ship nearby. "I see it too, Commander. We're getting a message from them." The alien ship sent a signal that appeared on every screen in the human fleet. The message was in perfect English, which was strange because humans had never met these aliens before. "People of Earth," the voice said. It sounded like metal scraping against stone. "We are the Galactic Council. We rule this galaxy. You will obey us now." Hyunwoo felt his stomach drop. The voice continued. "You have 3 days to decide. Give us 50% of everything you make. Give us 30% of your people to work for us. Accept our rule completely. If you refuse, we will destroy your entire species." The message ended. The bridge was silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. "Sir," said Woo Jin, "what do we do?" Before Hyunwoo could answer, another voice came over the radio. It was Captain Jin Ho from the ship Phoenix Rising. Jin Ho was only 30 years old, but he was already known as the best fighter pilot in the human fleet. "Admiral Bo-Ra, we should attack now," Jin Ho said. His voice was angry. "We can't let them threaten us like this." "Captain Jin Ho, be quiet," Admiral Bo-Ra replied. "Look at the size of that ship. Our weapons would not even scratch it." Hyunwoo knew she was right. The alien ship's shields were so strong that they showed up on their sensors like a solid wall. Every weapon humanity had ever built would be useless against it. On Earth, President Min-ji sat in the emergency meeting room deep under the capital city. Around the table were the leaders of every nation and colony. Their faces were pale with worry. "How many ships do they have?" asked General Taemin, who commanded the Mars colonies. Dr. Hae-won, Earth's expert on alien life, pulled up a hologram above the table. "According to our deep space sensors, this is just one ship, but our computers estimate it could destroy our entire planet in minutes." "One ship?" President Min-ji could not believe it. "Just one?" "Yes, Madam President. But according to the message they have thousands more. They say they control over 10,000 different alien species across the galaxy." The room fell silent. 10,000 species. Humanity had always thought they might meet other intelligent life someday, but they never imagined anything like this. "Have any species ever fought back against them?" asked Minister Dong Hyun. Dr. Hae-won shook her head. The message included data about their history. No species has ever successfully resisted the Galactic Council. Ever. President Min-ji stood up and walked to the window. Even though they were underground, she could see the alien ship on the screens that showed the sky above. It sat there like a dark cloud over everything humanity had ever built. "What about our secret projects?" she asked quietly. Dr. Hae-won looked around the room nervously. "The quantum research is still experimental. Dr. Ji-eun's team has made progress, but nothing that could fight something like that." Meanwhile, in space, Admiral Bo-Ra called a meeting of all ship captains. They appeared on her screen as holograms. Some were in the asteroid belt, others were near the outer planets. All of them looked worried. "I want everyone to stay calm," Bo-Ra said. "We have 3 days to figure this out." Captain So-young was near Jupiter with a mining fleet. "Admiral, should we start evacuating people to the outer colonies?" "And go where?" replied Captain Mi-young, from her patrol ship near Saturn. "If they can find Earth, they can find everywhere else we go." Captain Jin Ho appeared on the screen again. His young face was set with determination. "We have to fight. It's what humans do. We've never surrendered. To anyone." "This is different, Jin Ho," said Admiral Bo-Ra. "We're not fighting other humans now. We're fighting something that has conquered the entire galaxy. So what? Jinho shot back. Maybe the galaxy was waiting for humans to show up. Some of the other captains laughed, but it was not a happy sound. They all knew Jinho was brave, but bravery would not be enough against the Galactic Council. Back on Earth, news of the alien demand spread quickly. On every continent, people gathered around screens to watch the reports. Some cried, others prayed. Many just stood in shock. In the Asian Federation, families hugged each other and wondered if they would be separated forever. In the American states, people packed emergency bags even though they had nowhere to go. In the European Union, scientists worked frantically to find any weakness in the alien ship. On Mars, Governor Tae-min called his own meeting. Mars had always been proud of its independence from Earth. The colonists there were tough people who had built cities in one of the most dangerous places humans had ever lived. I don't care how big their ship is, Tae-min told his advisors. Mars will never bow to aliens. Sir, said his military commander, Colonel Hyojin, our weapons are even smaller than Earth's. What can we do? We can die fighting instead of living as slaves, Tae-min replied. That's what humans do. Similar conversations were happening on every human colony. On Europa, the underwater cities prepared for war even though they knew it was hopeless. On Titan, the mining stations continued working, building as much as they could before the deadline. As the first day passed, the alien ship did nothing except wait. It hung in space like a threat that could not be ignored. Human ships tried to scan it, but their sensors could not penetrate its defenses. It was like trying to look through a mountain. Dr. Ji-eun worked in her laboratory deep underground on Earth. She had been working on quantum physics for 15 years, trying to solve problems that most scientists said were impossible. Now, with only 2 days left, she pushed herself harder than ever before. The quantum entanglement field is still unstable, she told her assistant Dr. Changmin. But if we could make it work, we don't have time for if, Changmin replied. We need something that works now. I know, Ji-eun said. She looked at the equations covering the walls of her lab. Somewhere in those numbers was the answer. She just had to find it. On the second day, more alien ships appeared. They were smaller than the first one, but still larger than anything humans had built. They positioned themselves around Earth's solar system like guards. Captain Yoon Seo was on patrol near Neptune when 5 alien ships surrounded her vessel. They did not attack, but their message was clear. There was no escape. Admiral Bo-ra, Yoon Seo reported, "They're everywhere now. Every exit from the solar system is blocked." Admiral Bo-ra nodded. She had expected this. The aliens were making sure humans could not run away before the deadline. With only hours left, President Minji called Admiral Bo-ra for the final decision. The conversation was short and private. No one else heard what they said to each other. Wendy. It was over. Admiral Bo-ra sat alone on her bridge. The weight of humanity's future rested on her shoulders. In a few minutes, she would have to give the Galactic Council an answer that would determine whether humans lived as free people or died, fighting for their freedom. She looked out at the stars and thought about everything humans had accomplished. They'd come so far from their home planet, building cities on worlds that tried to kill them every day. They had never given up, no matter how hard things became. Admiral Bo-ra picked up her communicator and sent a message to President Minji. Then she opened a channel to the alien ship. "This is Admiral Bo-ra of the Human Defense Fleet," she said into the communicator. "We have our answer." The word came through every communication channel in the solar system at exactly the same time. It was broadcast from Earth, from Mars, from every space station and colony ship. The message was simple and clear. No, not "we refuse" or "we will consider your terms" or "we need more time." Just one word, spoken in every human language and then repeated in the alien language with perfect pronunciation. No. On the massive alien ship called Sovereign's Will, Supreme Arbiter Velkorian stood frozen in surprise. The crystalline being had lived for over 3,000 years and ruled the galaxy for most of that time. In all those centuries, no species had ever given such a simple answer to the Council's demands. Velkorian's body flickered with confused light patterns. The crystal formations that made up their face shifted as they tried to understand what they had just heard. Did they say no? Velkorian asked their assistant, Subcommander Krikstal. Krikstal was a reptilian being whose own species had been conquered by the Council 500 years ago. His scales turned pale with shock as he checked the translation computers. Yes, Supreme Arbiter, they said no, nothing else, just no. The bridge of the alien ship fell silent. Every alien species that served the Council had fought when they were first contacted. Some had tried to negotiate. Others had begged for mercy. A few had tried to hide. But none had ever simply said no, and then waited. Check the translation. Again, Velkorian ordered. Krikstal ran the message through every language computer they had. The result was always the same. The humans had said no in the most basic way possible, as if the Council's demand was not worthy of a longer response. Sir, said Science Officer Morden, whose blue-skinned people had been among the first to join the Council willingly. Perhaps they do not understand the consequences of refusal. Send them the standard examples, Velkorian commanded. The alien ship transmitted images to every human device. The pictures showed dead worlds, planets that had been burned to nothing when their people refused Council rule. Billions of beings who had been turned to dust because they would not obey. The response came back in 30 seconds. No. This time the word was accompanied by data that made the aliens' computers spark with confusion. The humans had analyzed every image, identified the weapons used, and calculated exactly how the Council had destroyed those worlds. They understood perfectly what would happen to them, and they still said no. On Earth, President Minji stood in the command center watching the reactions from around the solar system. The decision had been unanimous. Every colony, every station, every ship had voted the same way. Ma'am, said Communication Officer Namsu, we're getting transmissions from outside the solar system. Word is spreading. Minji looked at the displays showing messages from across the galaxy. Species that had been enslaved for thousands of years were sending secret communications asking if humans had really told the Council no. Broadcast our answer to everyone, Minji ordered. Let the whole galaxy know. The word no began traveling through space at light speed, reaching alien worlds that had not heard defiance in millennia. On the slave world of Theta Cygni, the Velmarian people gathered around hidden communication devices. They had been forced to work in the Council's mines for 2,000 years. When they heard humanity's response, something stirred in their hearts that they had almost forgotten. Hope. They said no, whispered Velmarian leader Takesh to his people. Someone finally said no. Meanwhile, in Earth's solar system, something else was happening. Captain So Young led her mining fleet through the asteroid belt. But they were not mining normal materials. Her ships were collecting rare metals and elements that officially did not exist on any Council database. How much more do we need? So Young asked her chief engineer Dong Hyun. Dong Hyun checked his instruments. Dr. Ji-eun says we need at least 50 more tons of quantum-stable materials. The new engines won't work without them. Engines? Asked So Young. What engines? Dong Hyun smiled. It was the first time anyone had smiled since the aliens arrived. The ones that aren't supposed to be possible. Deep beneath Earth's surface, Dr. Ji-eun worked frantically in a laboratory that did not appear on any official records. Her team had been working on theoretical physics for years, but always in secret. The government had funded their research because some people believed humanity would eventually need weapons that other species could not understand. The quantum field generators are finally stable, Ji-eun reported to Dr. Chang Min. But we've never tested them on anything larger than a mouse. Well, we're about to test them on starships, Chang Min replied. Are you ready? Ji-eun looked at the equations that covered every wall of her laboratory. For 15 years, she had been trying to solve problems that the galaxy's greatest scientists said were impossible. Now she had 72 hours to make them work or watch humanity die. I'm ready, she said. Above them, the alien fleet was receiving reports that confused their commanders more each hour. Human ships were moving throughout the solar system, but not in retreat patterns. They were moving like they had a plan. Supreme Arbiter Velkorian called a meeting of all Council forces in the area. Representatives from dozens of species appeared, as holograms on the bridge of Sovereign's Will. "The humans are behaving strangely," Valkorion announced. "They show no signs of preparing for surrender or evacuation." "Perhaps they are in shock," suggested Commander Dorvan of the insectoid. "Hivimari. Some species freeze when they realize how hopeless their situation is." "No," said Sub-Commander Krixtal. "I have been monitoring their communications. They are not frozen. They are working." "Working on what?" Valkorion demanded. Krixtal's scales shifted color with uncertainty. "Unknown, Supreme Arbiter. But their activity levels have increased since they gave their answer. It is as if saying no made them more determined, not less." On Mars, Governor Taman held his own meeting with the colonial military commanders. The Red Planet had always been proud of its independence, and that pride was stronger now than ever. "How many ships can we put in space?" Taman asked. Colonel Hyajin checked her reports. "Every ship we have, sir. Mining vessels, transport ships, even the atmospheric processors. If it can fly, we can put weapons on it. And how long will we last against that alien fleet?" "Honestly, about 5 minutes." Taman nodded. "Then we'll make those 5 minutes count." Similar conversations were happening on every human world. The colonies had always been places where only the toughest people could survive. Now that toughness was focused on one goal, making the aliens regret threatening humanity. On Europa, the underwater cities prepared their own defenses. The Ice Moon's population had spent generations learning to survive in an environment that could kill them in seconds. They had become experts at building things that worked in impossible conditions. "The pressure suits are ready," reported Chief Engineer Wu Jin to Europa's governor. "If they want to take our people, they'll have to come down here and get them." "How deep can we go?" the governor asked. "As deep as we need to. The ocean is 60 miles deep in some places. Let's see their ships follow us there." Back in space, Admiral Bo-Ra received reports from every human fleet. The news was not encouraging from a military standpoint. Humanity's entire space force consisted of 300 ships, most of them designed for exploration and mining, not war. But there was something else in the reports that made Bo-Ra smile. Every ship captain had volunteered for combat duty. Every colony had offered to send their people to fight. Humanity might not have the best weapons or the strongest ships, but they had something the Council did not expect. They had refused to be afraid. "Admiral," said Captain Yuncio over the communicator, "my ship is ready for whatever comes next." Yuncio commanded the vessel Stubborn Hope, a converted research ship that was now carrying some of Dr. Ji-Yoon's experimental technology. Her crew consisted entirely of volunteers who knew they would probably die in the coming battle. "Are your people ready, Captain?" Bo-Ra asked. "Yes, ma'am. We understand the odds. We just don't care about them." As the deadline approached, the alien fleet began to move into attack formation. They had given humanity every chance to surrender, shown them examples of what happened to species who refused, and waited patiently for common sense to prevail. But, instead of surrender, they detected something impossible. Human ships were approaching their position. Small ships that should not have been able to threaten Council vessels were moving through space, using technology that violated known physics. "Supreme Arbiter," reported Science Officer Mordoon, "the human vessels are generating quantum signatures that should not be possible." Valkorion studied the readings on their displays. According to every scientific law the Council knew, the energy patterns coming from the human ships could not exist. "Are our sensors malfunctioning?" Valkorion asked. "No, sir. I have checked them multiple times. The humans are using technology that our scientists said was theoretically impossible." For the first time in 3,000 years, Supreme Arbiter Valkorion felt something they had not experienced since they were young: uncertainty. The human fleet was small and should have been easily destroyed. But as Valkorion watched the impossible energy readings grow stronger, the alien scientists aboard Sovereign's Will stared at their instruments in disbelief. The readings coming from the approaching human ships made no sense according to everything they knew about physics. Chief Science Officer Morden had spent 800 years studying the laws that governed the universe. His people had mastered space travel before humans had discovered fire. but the energy signatures from the small human fleet were showing patterns that should not exist. Supreme Arbiter, Mordun said, his blue skin turning pale. The human vessels are generating quantum fields that our computers say are impossible. Supreme Arbiter. Velkorian's crystalline body flickered with confused light. Explain. They appear to be manipulating matter at the quantum level while in motion. Our greatest scientists proved this was impossible 3,000 years ago. The energy requirements alone would destroy any ship that tried it. Yet they are doing it, Velkorian observed. Yes, sir. They are doing something that cannot be done. Captain Yunseo stood on the bridge of Stubborn Hope and watched the massive alien fleet grow larger on her screens. Her ship was tiny compared to the council vessels, but she felt no fear. The technology humming beneath her feet was proof that humans had never learned to accept the word impossible. Engine status? She asked her chief engineer, Lieutenant Wu Jin. Quantum field generators are stable at 98%, Wu Jin reported. Dr. Ji-Eun's modifications are working perfectly. Weapons? The matter disruptors are charged and ready. We have enough power for 12 shots before the generators need to cool down. Yunseo nodded. 12 shots against a fleet of hundreds of ships. The odds were laughable, but humans had never been good at mathematics when it came to giving up. Her crew consisted of 43 volunteers from across the solar system. Every one of them had left families behind, knowing they would probably never see them again. But when Admiral Bora had asked for volunteers to test humanity's secret weapons, thousands of people had applied. Captain, said Communications Officer Min Ji from her station, we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Word about our refusal has reached at least 50 star systems. Yunseo looked at the messages flowing across her screen. They were coming from species that had been enslaved by the Council for hundreds or thousands of years. Most were just fragments, transmitted in secret through channels the Council did not monitor. What are they saying? They want to know if we really said no. Some are asking how we plan to fight. Others are just hoping. On the slave world of Proxima Centauri, the Therakan people gathered in hidden tunnels beneath their work facilities. They had been forced to mine crystals for the Council for 800 years. Their bodies were perfect for underground work, but their spirits had been crushed long ago. Until today. The humans said no, whispered Therakan leader Screech to his people. After all this time, someone said no. But they will be destroyed, another Therakan replied. The Council always wins. Maybe, Screech said. But they said no. That means it can be said. Similar conversations were happening on dozens of worlds across the galaxy. Species that had forgotten the meaning of resistance were suddenly remembering that refusing to obey was possible. Back in Earth's solar system, the human fleet continued its impossible approach toward the Council forces. The ships moved through space using technology that broke fundamental laws of physics, but they worked anyway because humans had never bothered to learn those laws properly. Dr. Ji-Eun had always believed that if something was theoretically impossible, it just meant no one had found the right theory yet. When Council scientists declared that quantum matter manipulation required more energy than a star could produce, she had simply found a different way to do it. When they said faster-than-light communication was impossible across galactic distances, engineer Namsu had built it in his garage using parts from old mining equipment. When they declared that conscious thought could not affect quantum fields, physicist Ye Jin had proven them wrong by thinking really hard about it. The human approach to science was simple. If something could not be done, find a way to do it anyway. If the math said it was impossible, change the math. If the laws of physics got in the way, work around them. Supreme Arbiter, Sub-Commander Krixtal reported from his station. The human fleet has reached our outer perimeter. Velkorian studied the tactical display. 27 human ships were approaching 300 Council vessels. The humans should have been vaporized the moment they came within weapons range, but they were still coming. Open fire, Velkorian commanded. The Council fleet unleashed weapons that could crack planets. Energy beams that had destroyed 1,000 worlds lanced out toward the tiny human ships. The beams passed right through them, Report, Velkorian demanded. The humans are phasing in and out of normal space, Morden said, his voice shaking with confusion. They are using quantum tunneling on a macroscopic scale. This is impossible. Everything they are doing is impossible, Velkorian replied. But they are still doing it. Captain Mi Young commanded the ship Defiant Logic, one of the vessels in the human fleet's advanced squadron. Her ship's phase generator allowed it to exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously, making it impossible for conventional weapons to hit. Their weapons are powerful but predictable, she reported to Admiral Bora. They fire at where we are, not where we might be. That's because most species can only be in one place at a time, Bora replied over the quantum communication system. They've never fought anyone who refused to follow that rule. The battle was unlike anything the Council had ever experienced. Human ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts, striking at Council vessels with weapons that seemed to ignore shields and armor. Every time the Council adapted their tactics, the humans would do something new and impossible. Captain Changmin's squadron attacked a Council battleship by phasing their weapons directly inside its hull. The matter disruptors tore the alien ship apart from the inside out, leaving its crew floating in space pods, confused and defeated rather than dead. We're not trying to kill them, Changmin explained to his crew. We're trying to prove a point. Across the galaxy, enslaved species watched the battle through secret communication networks. They saw the impossible happening. The Council was losing a fight. On Beta Orionis, the aquatic Mordelians had spent 600 years building underwater cities for the Council. Their leaders gathered in the deepest parts of their ocean world to discuss what they were seeing. The humans are not superior warriors, observed Mordelian Elder Blue Wave. Their ships are smaller and their weapons are weaker. Then how are they winning? Asked another elder. They are not following the rules, Blue Wave replied. They are fighting as if the laws of physics are suggestions rather than commands. The Council fleet began to retreat. For the first time in their history, they were facing an enemy that could not be defeated through superior firepower, because that enemy refused to acknowledge that superior firepower should matter. Supreme Arbiter, Velkorian watched his forces fall back and felt something his species had not experienced in 50,000 years. Doubt. Sir, said Crixtal, should we call for reinforcements? Velkorian considered this. The Council had thousands of ships and millions of warriors. They could eventually overwhelm the humans through sheer numbers. But something about this situation felt different. No, Velkorian said slowly. I want to understand what we are facing first. Captain Yunseo's ship Stubborn Hope pursued a retreating Council destroyer. She could have destroyed it easily with her matter disruptors, but instead, she opened a communication channel. Council vessel, this is Captain Yunseo of the human ship Stubborn Hope. Do you surrender? The alien captain appeared on her screen. It was a tall insectoid being with multiple eyes that showed clear confusion. You cannot defeat us, the alien said. We have ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years. That's nice, Yunseo replied. Do you surrender? We have defeated species with technology far more advanced than yours. Congratulations. Do you surrender? The alien captain paused. Why do you not follow the laws of physics? Yunseo smiled. Which laws? We've never been very good at following rules we didn't help write. It was the truth. Humanity had reached the stars not by following established principles, but by stubbornly refusing to accept that certain things could not be done. When scientists said faster than light travel was impossible, humans had built engines that ignored the speed of light entirely. When experts declared that quantum consciousness was a fantasy, humans had made it work because they needed it to work. The alien captain stared at her through the communication screen. What do you want from us? We want you to leave our solar system and tell the Council that humans are not interested in being ruled by anyone. And if we refuse? Yunseo's smile grew wider. Then we'll keep doing impossible things until you change your mind. The alien ship moved away, leaving the human fleet in control of the battlefield. But the real victory was not in space. It was happening across the galaxy as enslaved species realized that the Council could be defeated. The word no was spreading from world to world, carried by quantum communications that the Council could not intercept because they had never believed such communications were possible. The battle spread across the solar system like wildfire. Council forces that had expected to crush a primitive species instead found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow any known rules of warfare. Captain Mi Young's ship Defiant. Logic phased through a Council battleship's shields as if they were made of paper. The alien shields were designed to stop energy weapons and physical projectiles, but they could not stop something that existed in multiple dimensions at the same time. Target their weapon systems, not their life support, Mi Young ordered her. Tactical Officer Sung Ho. We're not here to commit genocide. But Captain, Sung Ho replied, if we destroy their weapons, they can just get more ships. Then we'll disable those ships too, Mi Young said calmly. We have time. It was a strange thing to say in the middle of a battle, but Mi Young was right. The human ships moved so fast and unpredictably that the Council forces could barely track them, let alone hit them. Every human vessel seemed to be in 3 places at once, attacking from angles that should not exist. Supreme Arbiter Velkorian watched the battle from the Bridge of Sovereign's Will and tried to understand what was happening. His forces outnumbered the humans 10-1, but they might as well have been fighting ghosts. Science Officer Morden, Velkorian called out, explain to me how they are doing this. Morden's blue skin had turned almost white with stress. Supreme Arbiter, they appear to be using consciousness to manipulate quantum fields in real time. This allows them to exist in multiple probability states simultaneously. That is impossible. Yes, sir. Completely impossible. Our greatest minds proved that conscious thought cannot affect quantum mechanics at a macro scale. Yet here we are. Yes, sir. Here we are. The quantum entanglement communicator built by engineer Ha-Un was broadcasting the battle across the galaxy in real time. This should have been impossible too, since quantum communication over such distances required more energy than most stars produced. But Ha-Un had never been very interested in what was supposed to be possible. On the slave world of Kepler 402b, the crystalline Zekthani people watched the battle through hidden receivers they had built in their work camps. They had been mining rare elements for the Council for 1,200 years, but today they stopped working and gathered around the communication devices. Look at them fight, whispered Zekthani worker Glowshard to her companions. They are so small, but they are not afraid. The Council will bring more ships, another worker replied. They always bring more ships, maybe, Glowshard said. But the humans said no, and they are still saying no. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out on hundreds of worlds. Species that had been enslaved for so long they had forgotten what freedom looked like were watching 27 human ships fight the most powerful fleet in the galaxy, and somehow winning. Back in Earth's solar system, Admiral Bo-Ra coordinated the battle from her flagship Terra's Defiance. The ship was equipped with Dr. Ji-Un's latest quantum technology, which allowed Bo-Ra to communicate with her entire fleet instantly regardless of distance or interference. Captain Changmin, how are your engines holding up? She asked. Changmin's voice came through clearly despite his ship being on the other side of Jupiter. The quantum field generators are running hot, but they're stable. Dr. Ji-Un really outdid herself this time. Captain Yun Seo, what's your status? We've disabled 6 Council ships without casualties on either side, Yun Seo reported. Their crews are confused but unharmed. I think they're starting to get the message. The message was simple. Humans were not trying to conquer or destroy the Council. They were just refusing to be conquered themselves. Every attack was precisely targeted, to disable rather than kill. Every victory was followed by an offer of surrender that the Council forces were too proud to accept. On Earth, President Minji watched the battle from the underground command center. Reports were coming in from across the planet as people gathered to watch the impossible fight happening above their heads. Ma'am, said Communications Officer Namsu, we're receiving thousands of messages from other species. They want to know how we're fighting the Council. What should we tell them? President Minji asked. The truth, replied Dr. Ji-Un, who had been brought to the command center to monitor her quantum technology. We tell them that we never learned that some things are impossible. The truth was that humanity's approach to the Council had been developing for decades. When first contact protocols were established after the discovery of alien signals, most human scientists and leaders had assumed they would eventually meet species more advanced than themselves. But a few people, led by Dr. Ji-un, an engineer, Namsu, had taken a different approach. Instead of preparing to be impressed by alien technology, they had focused on solving problems that alien scientists claimed could not be solved. When the Council's databases indicated that faster than light, communication was impossible, Namsu had spent 15 years figuring out how to do it anyway. When alien mathematics proved that quantum consciousness was fantasy, Ji-un had made it work in her laboratory. When Council physics declared that matter manipulation at the quantum level was impossible, humans had built engines that did it. Routinely, the human fleet was not superior to the Council's forces. They were just using technology that the Council had never bothered to develop because their scientists had proven it could not exist. Captain So-young led a squadron of converted, mining ships against a Council destroyer group. Her vessels looked clumsy compared to the sleek alien warships, but they moved through space like dancers, phasing in and out of reality as they attacked. "Remember," So-young told her pilots, "we're not trying to win a war. We're trying to prove a point." "What point is that, Captain?" asked one of her pilots. That saying no is always an option. The Council destroyer group fired everything they had at So-young's squadron. Energy beams that could melt asteroids, missiles that could crack moons, and particle weapons that could disintegrate matter at the atomic level. All of it passed harmlessly through the human ships, which simply existed in different dimensions during the attack. Then the human ships returned to normal space and fired their matter disruptors, which ignored the Council's shields and disabled the destroyer's weapon systems without harming their crews. "Council ships, this is Captain So-young," she broadcast on all frequencies. "You have been defeated. Do you surrender?" The alien captain who replied sounded bewildered. "How are you doing this? Our sensors show that your ship should not be able to function." "Our ships work fine," So-young replied. "Your sensors just aren't very good." It was true. The Council's technology was impressive, but it was based on accepting limitations that humans had never acknowledged. Council ships were fast, but they could only exist in one place at a time. Council weapons were powerful, but they could only hit targets that followed predictable physics. Council shields were strong, but they could only stop attacks that came from normal space. Humans, who had never been very good at following rules they did not help write, had simply built technology that ignored all those limitations. The battle reached its turning point when the Council's main battle fleet, led by the massive dreadnought Sovereign's Will, attempted to retreat from the solar system. They found their path blocked by a single human ship. Captain Hae-jin commanded the vessel Stubborn Principle, a converted research ship that was smaller than most Council fighters. But as the alien fleet approached, her ship suddenly multiplied. One ship became 10, then 20, then 50, all existing in the same space through quantum probability manipulation. "This is Captain Hae-jin to the Council fleet," she broadcast. "You are not leaving until we have a conversation." Supreme Arbiter Velkorian stared at the impossible sight of 50 identical ships occupying the same location. "How many ships do the humans actually have?" 27, sir," reported Sub-Commander Krikstal. "But they appear to be using quantum multiplication to create probability echoes of their vessels. Is that possible?" "No, sir. Absolutely not possible. Yet there they are. Yes, sir, there they are." For the first time in 50,000 years, a Council fleet was trapped by an enemy that refused to acknowledge the laws of physics, but instead of destroying the alien ships, Captain Hae-jin opened a communication channel to every Council vessel simultaneously. "People of the Galactic Council," she said, "we are not your enemies. We are just humans who said no to your demand for tribute. We have disabled your weapons but harmed none of your people. We offer you a choice." The communication was broadcast across the galaxy through the quantum network that engineer Ha-un had built in defiance of universal law. Every enslaved species heard Hae-jin's words, and for the first time in millennia, they heard someone offering the council a choice instead of begging for mercy. You can leave our solar system and tell your superiors that humans are not interested in joining your empire, Hijin continued. Or you can stay and learn how we do impossible things. But you cannot force us to obey you, because we have forgotten how to surrender. Supreme Arbiter, Valkorion sat in silence for a long moment. The council had rules for every situation, procedures for every contingency, and protocols for every species they encountered. Admiral Bora stood on the bridge of the captured council flagship Sovereign's Will and looked out at the stars. 3 weeks had passed since the battle that changed everything, and she still could not quite believe what had happened. The massive, alien ship now served as a meeting place between humans and the Galactic Council. Instead of conquest, there had been conversation. Instead of destruction, there had been discovery. Supreme Arbiter Valkorion approached her, the crystalline being's form flickering with what Bora had learned were patterns of curiosity rather than aggression. Admiral Bora, Valkorion said, their voice like musical chimes. I must ask you something that has troubled me since our first meeting. What is it? Why? The question hung in the air between them. Why did your people choose to fight when victory was impossible? Why did you say no when surrender would have saved your lives? Bora smiled. It was a question she had been asked dozens of times by different alien species, and her answer was always the same. Because someone had to. Valkorion's crystalline form shifted into patterns Bora had learned indicated deep thought. That is not a logical reason. Logic has never been humanity's strongest trait, Bora replied. We're better at being stubborn. The aftermath of humanity's refusal had been unprecedented. Within days of the battle, reports began arriving from across the galaxy. Species that had been enslaved for thousands of years were suddenly saying no to their council overlords. On Proxima Centauri, the Therakan people had emerged from their underground mines and simply refused to go back to work. When council forces arrived to force them back into the tunnels, they found the mines sealed with quantum locks that their technology could not break. The humans taught us how to make these, Therakan leader Screech had told the council representatives. They said saying no was always an option. On Kepler 442b, the crystalline Zekathani had stopped mining rare elements and instead built communication devices that allowed them to contact other enslaved species across the galaxy. The quantum technology they used should have been impossible for them to understand, but human engineers had shared their knowledge freely. We never kept our technology secret, explained Dr. Ji-un to a gathering of alien scientists on the Sovereign's Will. What good is knowledge if you don't share it? The alien scientists representing dozens of species stared at her in amazement. In the Council's empire, advanced technology was carefully controlled and distributed only to trusted species. The idea of giving away revolutionary scientific discoveries was unthinkable. But if you share your technology, asked Morden, the blue-skinned science officer, what advantage do you have? We don't need an advantage, Ji-un replied. We just need everyone to be free to say no. Dr. Insu, who had been appointed as humanity's first galactic ambassador, worked with representatives from newly liberated species to establish something the galaxy had never seen before, a voluntary alliance based on cooperation instead of conquest. The Galactic Cooperative, as it came to be known, had a simple charter. Any species could join, any species could leave, and no species could be forced to do anything against their will. Decisions were made by consensus, and the word no was always respected. This will never work, Council Administrator Dorkesh had warned during the early negotiations. Government requires authority. Someone must be in charge. Why? Ambassador, Insu had asked. The question had no good answer. For 50,000 years, the Council had ruled because they were strong enough to enforce their will. But when someone simply refused to acknowledge their authority, their entire system began to crumble. The transformation was not immediate or complete. Many Council species chose to remain within the old system, preferring the stability of known oppression to the uncertainty of freedom. But enough species joined the cooperative to create a new power in the galaxy. Captain Yun Seo, now commanding the Terra's Defiance as flagship of the cooperative fleet, patrolled space lanes where ships from hundreds of species traveled freely. The quantum communication networks that engineer Namsu had built allowed instant coordination across the galaxy, while the matter manipulation technology developed by Dr. Ji-un made resources abundant for any species willing to learn. "Captain," reported her communications officer, Lieutenant Wu Jin, "we're receiving a distress call from the Vegan system. A council enforcement fleet is trying to reclaim the Velmarian colonies." "Set course for Vega," Yun Seo ordered. "Send word to all cooperative vessels in the area." The cooperative's response to aggression was as unconventional as everything else humans did. Instead of fighting, they offered choices. Council ships that attacked cooperative worlds found themselves surrounded by vessels that could not be destroyed, because they existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. When force failed, the humans would open communication channels and simply talk to their enemies. "Why are you fighting us?" they would ask. "What do you hope to accomplish? Would you like to try a different approach?" Many council commanders, frustrated by their inability to defeat an enemy that refused to follow the rules of war, eventually agreed to negotiations. Others retreated in confusion, unable to understand how to fight people who treated warfare as an opportunity for conversation. On Earth, President Minji stood in her office and watched reports from across the galaxy. Former slave worlds were becoming thriving colonies. Species that had been enemies for millennia were working together on scientific projects. The quantum technology humans had developed was being adapted and improved by alien minds that approached problems from completely different angles. "Ma'am," said her aide, "the council has requested another meeting. They want to discuss terms for a permanent peace treaty." "What kind of terms?" Minji asked. "They're offering to recognize the cooperative as an equal power and establish formal borders between council and cooperative space." Minji shook her head. "Tell them we're not interested in borders. Anyone who wants to leave the council and join the cooperative is welcome. Anyone who wants to stay with the council can do that too. But we won't agree to leave people trapped in a system they don't want." It was a position that frustrated council leadership, but delighted enslaved species across the galaxy. The knowledge that escape was always possible, that saying no was always an option, gave hope to billions of beings who had lived without it for centuries. The greatest change was not technological or political, it was philosophical. The galaxy was learning what humans had always known, that refusing to accept an impossible situation was often the first step toward making it possible. Dr. Chang Min, now director of the cooperative's research division, worked with alien scientists to develop new technologies that solved problems previously considered unsolvable. The combination of human stubbornness and alien innovation produced breakthroughs that neither species could have achieved alone. "The key," Chang Min explained to a mixed group of human and alien researchers, "is to never accept that something cannot be done. If the current approach doesn't work, try a different one. If that doesn't work, try another one. Eventually, you'll find something that works." "But what if the laws of physics say it's impossible?" asked a young Therican scientist. Chang Min smiled. "Then we'll have to find new laws." On the former slave world of Beta Orionis, the aquatic Mordelians had transformed their ocean cities from forced labor camps into centers of learning and culture. Their leader, Elder Blue Wave, often met with human ambassadors to discuss the Yao changes happening across the galaxy. "Your people have given us something we had forgotten," Blue Wave told Ambassador Hai Jin during one such meeting. "You have given us the courage to dream again." "We didn't give you anything," He-jin replied. "We just reminded you that you already had it." The council itself began to change. Species that had joined willingly thousands of years ago started demanding representation in council decisions. The crystalline Velcorians, faced with the choice between eternal war and adaptation, chose to evolve. Supreme Arbiter Velcorian, now serving as the council's ambassador to the cooperative, worked with human diplomats to establish new protocols for interspecies relations. The old system of conquest and tribute was gradually replaced by trade agreements and cultural exchanges. "We ruled through fear for 50,000 years," Velkorian admitted to Admiral Bora during one of their regular meetings. But fear is not sustainable when people are no longer afraid. Fear never was the answer, Bora replied. You just never had anyone show you an alternative. 5 years after humanity's simple no had echoed across the galaxy, a young Zekathani child approached Ambassador Insu during a cultural exchange ceremony on the former slave world of Kepler 442b. Ambassador, the child asked, my teacher says humans were the first species to say no to the council. Why were you the first? Insu knelt down to meet the child's gaze. The question had become legendary across the galaxy, asked by beings from dozens of species who wanted to understand how such a simple word had changed everything. We weren't braver than anyone else, Insu explained gently. We just never learned that some things are impossible. And by the time someone tried to teach us, it was too late. The child's crystalline features shifted into what Insu had learned, was a smile. Will you teach us to forget impossible things too?